Good morning, I'm Mr. Slick. I do everything just right the first time, but not everyone does. So why I've come here this morning is to deliver to you the gospel of change and how you can influence change in your life in simple, easy steps that I won't tell you until you give me a lot of money. But instead of doing that this morning, maybe I'll talk about what I started talking about last time when I did a sermon on the Serenity Prayer. And the part last time that I was grappling with is the things that I can't change. Whether it was I'm driving in my car and the person in front of me doesn't understand what the speed limit ought to be. They're driving what it is, perhaps. Or maybe it's something bigger than that. But I have all sorts of things in my life that could change, and some of them are things that I can change. So what I want to talk about today is to change the things I can. Let me start from the context of what Kevin was referring to earlier. The Serenity Prayer has some different versions, and I wasn't going into the longer version in any case, but we could take it as something like this. Grant me the courage to change the things I can, the serenity to accept the things I can't change, and the wisdom to know the difference. I've talked a lot about wisdom in a lot of different ways because I was a philosophy major. I got a master's in philosophy. I got a doctorate. I've done philosophy a lot. But the real life, real world, accepting things and changing things, that's a little harder for me than the Socratic brain stuff. So I want to speak to that real world stuff. And I want to do it with this caveat. Have you ever heard a parent, or as a parent, actually most of us are old enough that even if we're not, we're old enough to have peers that are parents who say, do as I say, not as I do. So it's my words I want you to look at and not how I prepare for a sermon or something like that, okay? The first thing I want to do, because this is important to some people, and if you aren't sure about your memory, be careful, write this down. This is the definition of change. Change is what other people need to do. My life would be great if only they would. So this person needs to do that, and this whole bunch of people needs that. And hashtag Florida morons. Don't get me started on this COVID stuff in our enlightened state. If change were what other people needed to do, obviously it wouldn't be my responsibility. It wouldn't be a challenge to me. Everything would fall under that other part of the Serenity Prayer about things I can't change, unless the change I think is really important for someone else might be something that I should talk to them about if I have that kind of relationship with them. Otherwise, what I want to do is I want to focus on me. I want you to focus on you. My life is what I have the most direct responsibility for, and my life is what I have the most direct effect on. So if I set aside all the radically important changes that others need to make, what I want to do this morning is look at me. Even if I want to change the world, there's one point of view that I should let that begin with me. That I want to be the change I seek. That even when we're talking about social action, even when we're talking about matters of conscience, there's a certain sort of personal embodiment of that commitment that makes the effective exercise of social change more possible, more likely, and more in the spirit in which we want it to be carried out, where we're inhaling that peace and exhaling that love, right? So when I think about personal change, when I think about the Serenity Prayer saying that, give me the courage to change what I can. Wow, is that a hard thing? The Serenity Prayer is written in a way that recognizes there are at least some changes that are going to be hard. If they're easy, I've probably already made them. Right?
So there are little things like, I used to cut off the legs of my blue jeans when they got too raggedy, and I'd make cutoffs out of them, and those were the shorts that I wore. That was a long, long time ago, but I've never had the best sense of style, and that continued into my adulthood. My daughter thought I needed to change my shorts. And it took me a while to do that, but that was a change that wasn't too hard. I gave up smoking. Have any of you quit smoking? That's not an easy change. But unlike certain deeper psychologically rooted changes, unlike some things that require great ongoing sacrifice, for most of us, when we're really intending to commit smoking and we're really wanting to do it, there's a defined period of time. We may not know how long it's going to take, but then you get past it and you're not a smoker anymore. That's the way it works for most of us anyway. So I was able even to quit smoking, again, because I had gotten to the point where I didn't smoke very much anyway, and my daughter just, Dad! And so I thought, well, if I'm telling her, well, I could quit, I don't smoke that much, then I should quit, because it meant that much to her. But there are other changes that I have that you might think would be easy for me, and for me are not. Do you have anything like that? Do you have anything that you are yourself aware? This should be easy. Objectively, it looks like it would be easy. Lots of people do this. Why can't I? Testify. Testify. Any number of examples we could have of that. I won't go into my particular details at any great length this morning. But what I do want to say is that we cannot change unless we believe that change is possible and that change is desirable and that in some sense of the word it can happen to us. So I'm not going to tell you the practical techniques to make things happen. I'm not going to tell you how to change yourself or your world. As a philosopher good at the mind stuff, I'm going to talk about the philosophical, mental, psychological elements that go into a process of change in our lives. That's what my focus is going to be this morning. The biggest change killer that there is, besides maybe the definition I gave earlier, that's just the way it is. I know you Negroes are upset with your lives here in Alabama in 1962. I know you'd like to see some things be different, but it's been this way a long time. People have wanted to change it, but there's some things you just can't change. Variation on that is, it will change after you're dead or whenever. To which a very good response is, we can't wait, and that sort of thing. So if you believe that that's just the way it is, there will be no change. Maybe you're a fatalist. Maybe you believe that about everything. Oh, when your number's up, it's up, so why should I wear a mask? Why should I get vaccinated? When your number's up, it's up. That's kind of fatalism that could extend to anything. But some of us apply it, not universally, but to things that we see in ourselves. And so the form it takes at a personal level is not, that's just the way it is, but that's just how I am. Have you ever done that? I've done that a lot. Somebody wants me to do something a different way, be a different way. Something comes up, and I go, but that's just, it may start small, but well, that's just how I do this. But with bigger, that's just how I am. That's just who I am. And it may be something that I recognize could be unpleasant for others or unpleasant for me, but I think, well, what am I going to do about it? That's just how I am. An example of that, I grew up with a condition that at the time was called hyperactivity. I got very good grades in school, so I never was medicated for it. I was never given counseling for it. I was never taught how to deal with it. And so I grew up with a whole slew of stuff that I struggled with that I accepted as normal for me. And it was only in adulthood, through my therapist sister pointing out, there's stuff you can do with ADHD. That in that case, I could decide, well, okay, let me reflect on this thing about me that I've always thought was just how I am, and explore what's possible in the way of change. I'm not ADHD anymore. But there are things that I've done. There are things that you can do. There's a physical example I had, too, that I had physical symptoms for many years, and it was, it's inconvenient, it's uncomfortable, there's this, there's that. But I've got this condition. That's just the way it is. And so later on, I could address that in ways that fit with the process I'm talking about this morning, and then end up feeling like, wow, I got cured. How did that happen? I wish somebody had told me that 10 years ago. So in the process of wrestling with change, the number one factor is to believe it's possible. Of course, I'm presupposing something. Pardon me a moment. My mouth dries up. I don't know why that is. Maybe I talk too much. But that's just how I am. So, this presupposes that I have a sense that there's something that could be better or different. So even if I don't believe it's possible, I could think, well, gosh, I wish that I weren't like that, right? So there are values at play. What's better and what's less good? If I don't have any distinction in those values, there's no reason to change, right? We would only undertake a process of change, especially if it were difficult, because we wanted to bring about something better. So there's a value perception, and there's a contrast between how it is and what it might be. And that's true of social change, but it's true of personal change as well. It may begin with a feeling, God, I wish it could start like that. So what I want to do is to outline a kind of process for the mentality of change. But as I said, it's not going to be concrete and specific. It's not going to have the payoff. As a matter of fact, I'm reminded of a cartoon I saw in the newspaper last week where a man opens a book on something like exercise made easy. And it says, you've opened this book and read the first sentence. That's enough for today. He says, I'm going to like this book. So in a way, I'm only doing the first sentence of a thing on change. But I do think that there's a structure intellectually for me to the process that we might go through. And I think that as I talk you through it, you may find a momentum building in your own sense of how a change can be accomplished on anything you would pick in your life. Let's say it starts with what I'll just call point number one. This could be better. That's the contrast. This could be better than it is. This thing about me. Instead of I'm just that way, or even if I do still think I'm just that way, it has to begin with something like, it'd be nice if I weren't. That would be enough to get me started on point one. So the first thing is those values in play, that contrast, that dissatisfaction. But when I stated that, I said, this could be better. So I'm not only pointing out the contrast, the word could embodies possibility. Not just, it would be nice if, but this could be better. So to say that something could be better is to say that it might come to be real that there's a better state than there is. That could come to be real. That sense of possibility is really important in our grasping of self-change. There was a time I was sitting, my father was pretty old. I don't know how long it was before he died. He was depressed and was having difficulties with his medication, et cetera, et cetera. And he was, let's just say, he began practicing with a greater intensity the customary irritability that he had shown in some ways for many years and that I am prone to myself, okay? Just getting irritable more and more and more and more. And there was one moment when I was watching my father do that, and a little light bulb went on over my head, and I thought, that's optional. A person doesn't need to just be that way. You can decide, I can decide, was kind of the light bulb over my, I can decide not to be that way, or at least not much that way, or a lot less that way. And I did, and I sort of have. So that was a little example of me going, wow, it's possible. The second thing that has to happen, along with the first being that you had the insight that this thing could be better, that it's possible for it to be better. I want it to be better. If it's possible for it to be better, if I'm dissatisfied with it, why wouldn't I want it to be better, huh? And one of the reasons is because deeper down, I'm not sure I really believe it's possible for me. Maybe I don't deserve it. Maybe this is my payback for something I did some other time. Maybe this is karma. Maybe this is part of God's will. Maybe this is what happens when you live in a country where President Trump is, I can have all kinds of reasons, known or unknown to myself, to undermine the sense that that change that I think would be better may not be possible for me. So if step one is this could be better, it's possible that this could be better. Stage two is, and I want it to be better. So part of that is that my desire for it binds me to that outcome. Now I'm rooting for an outcome. Now I have a horse in the race. Okay? If I want that, I have an attachment that is potentially helpful. Those of us who have benefited from the study or even the practice of Buddhism are familiar with the role of attachment in Buddhist philosophy and religion. Attachment is what we strive not to have, because attachment is the cause and root of all suffering. It is only because we are attached to the outcomes that we suffer from the events. So in that sense of attachment, one of the biggest obstacles to change is that I'm attached to the way I am. There's some kind of payoff or I wouldn't still be that way. And therapists get into this stuff. Well, if you're still doing that, what's in it for you? What's the payoff for you that keeps you playing out that symptom? Maybe there are attachments, there certainly have been for me, attachments that I've had that I wasn't aware of. And that when I decided to commit to a change, part of the change process was that these things would come up in ways I could realize them and deal with them, perhaps. But the attachment to the desire to change is, in my mind, a different kind of attachment. It's an intention where you're deliberately, consciously taking control of something in your life, and for reasons that presumably fit into the whole of your beliefs, priorities, and the context of your life and people you know, you think, this is where I would like it to be. So in a way, you're exercising some reflective or even spiritual intention in pointing yourself in that direction, okay? So everybody can do the number one, right? Everybody can go, this could be better. And if it could be better, it means it's possible for it to be better. If it's possible for it to be better, why wouldn't you want it to be better? So everyone can do number two, right? You can want it to be better. You can desire for it to be better. And what I'm saying is desire is energy. It may be what attaches us to our embodied, tangled up earthly plane of X, Y, and Z, but it's also energy. It's also mobilizing. And the first thing that happened in our change process is we got unstuck from the way things are. It wasn't just, well, that's how it is. Well, that's how it is. Well, that's how it is. We got beyond that concrete fixity to a mobilized sense of, well, something else is possible. And that's where the desire can become intentional. This absolutely essential part of the change process. Because now it's not just a whim. It's not just, oh gosh, I wish I didn't do that. It's an ongoing intention which isn't real different, if you think about it, from what a commitment is. You get married, you say a vow, you make this intense, legally and spiritually recognized commitment. What are you saying? Are you saying, phew, we signed that, so now we're married for life, and now we don't have to worry about any of that other stuff because we're always going to be in love and we're always going to care about it? Well, I don't think so. What we've signed, what we've uttered, what we've undertaken is to articulate an ongoing intention, a relationship that involves us deeply. So as soon as I say, I want it to be the better way, that can be like a wedding vow. That can be like, I'm going to point myself in that direction, and here's the difference between me and Mr. Slick that I opened with. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. I don't have any steps for that. My thing is not, first you do this and that. No behavioral anything. The psychology is that you open yourself radically to what you want to become. You are open, you ready yourself for that by a state of intentional desire, commitment, and you might undertake specific things if you know what to do. You might not even know what to do. There are times I go, you know what? I'm going to keep an eye out for what comes up. I don't know what to do, so I'm going to be vigilant in my awareness of opportunity. I'm going to even abet those opportunities by my readiness for them. There's some sports cliche about preparation and chance, and if I knew it, I would say it, and it would be true here. There are different ways I may move toward my change, and I want to just play out a couple of variations on that because I may or may not know how or where it would even come from. I'm open to the change, genuinely and really open to it. I'm ready for the change. There have been times in my life where maybe I wasn't quite ready for this. I'm ready. Boy, almost every time in my life that I've realized intentionally and powerfully that I'm ready for something, it's happened before too long. That feeling, I'm ready for this, is really strong stuff. In my life, it may not work for you, but it has for me. I'm attentive. I'm really watchful, perhaps. Or at least, even if that's a back burner watchfulness, I've kind of programmed myself to have those opportunities in my field of vision whenever they might be there. I'm attentive. And I'm supportive in myself. I'm supportive of when I have to wait. I'm supportive of the rhythms of it. I'm supportive of the complexities of it sometimes, of the messiness of real life. I find my way through because I want it, and I want to, and I believe it's possible and possible for me. So the most important thing for me, and this may be what existential therapy is based on, is we choose. I don't believe free will is absolute. I believe there's some things we really don't, in a meaningful philosophical sense, quite have free will over in our lives. It's complicated. It's fun. I'm writing a book that's partly on that. But I do believe that if it's possible for us to change, the most important element in that change is that we choose that change. It's not just, well, we'll see what happens. You want a recipe for it isn't going to work? Use that one. We'll see. It may work, it may not, right? But if I choose this, then I'm lining the powers of my life and my connection to the greater universe, whatever those might be, whatever my religion, whatever my values, anything else. I'm aligning myself with the oncoming change that I value. And I'm seeing it as something that is oncoming, even if I'm not quite sure how it's going to get here or which platform I need to be on, or if it's one of those weird Harry Potter platforms or something. The point is that I'm intending that, I'm ready for it because I'm choosing it. So if we think existentially about it, then the question becomes, if I'm choosing this, do I want this enough to choose to do what it takes to bring it about? Whether it's a midnight snack or getting a book written or anything else. Often, if change is hard, it's because there might be some sacrifice or some reorganization or reorientation of your life. If I'm choosing the change, do I want that enough to choose what I have to do for the change to come about? And it may be just as simple as that. Thank you.